Wow. What do you say about that, folks? Bit of post game a few hours later, recollections of the Titanic quarterfinal clash between France and South Africa at the Stade de France, St. Denis, Paris. 29-28, the Springboks escape with the victory. And I say escape, look at the stats. Of course, that's not how a game is won by statistics, but France dominated this game in so many ways in statistics. What a first half. What an incredible first half. Unbelievable. France goes out in front. South Africa comes back. Then they score again. Libbok misses a second kick. It's 12-7. And South Africa gives up a try almost immediately once again as the French come back down and score again. And Thomas Ramos is about to put France ahead. He's money. And out of nowhere comes Cheslin Kolbe barreling down the line and blocks the conversion attempt. We're locked at 12-12. Wow. Springboks score again. They go up 19-12. Then France scores. It's 19-19. And some strange play here. The Springboks elect to take a scrum when Willemse takes the mark. And then they kick for touch when they win the scrum penalty, but they don't get it into touch. Is a great play by the French player, brings it back into play. Then we got a card against Etzebeth, which legit, it was a card, but it's really tough. I mean, you look at Etzebeth, he was bent over going forward. The player was bending over towards him and changed direction towards him. And as a consequence, he had a glancing blow. Looked worse than it really was, but it's a yellow card. It's unfortunate, but the Springboks are down a player right at the end of the first half, and that sets up Ramos for a kick. And instead of 19-19 at the half, it's 22-19 France. They go out of the gates in the second half, and South Africa holds on during that period, give another 3 points, but they manage to keep the French out of the try zone, and that keeps them in the game. Evan Etzebeth comes back, big changes from the bench, and it's a grinding game from there. But one thing this game definitely exposed is something that the All Blacks and England will take a look at. First, England, and if South Africa gets further, and the All Blacks do, most likely, they'll also look at film from this game, and they'll see some glaring defensive lapses by the Springbok team, reminiscent of the game in New Zealand when the All Blacks walked all over the Springboks in the Rugby Championship, scoring, 18, 19 points, something like that in the first 18 minutes, 21 points, something like that. It was atrocious. It reminded me of that game. That should not happen for a team of this talent, this caliber. I'm not sure why that's happening, but it does happen. Nonetheless, it made for the most entertaining and perhaps one of the best rugby games in rugby union history in that first half. Second half was a grind out, slog it out affair. Now, a lot of people are going to have complaints about the officiating, and legitimately so. During the game, I pointed out a number of things that appeared to have been violations. Although perhaps my understanding of the law is the laws are a little bit off, especially like when de Klerk passed the ball and the player who was offside, it hit him and he impeded play. So, but there was no penalty. So anyways, a turnover. That one I don't understand how that's not a penalty. But anyway, the French have legitimate beef if they want to complain, but it really doesn't matter. Ben O'Keefe missed when Quagga Smith made that steal, which allowed that penalty. He did have his hand down on the ground, one of his hands. It's pretty clear, but O'Keefe couldn't see that. And that wound up being a penalty, which put South Africa up. But the French came right back down, and they, instead of 4 points, it was a 1 point difference, and that's where it was. Ultimately, in the end, three things won this game for South Africa. The first one was that Cheslin Kolbe chased down that kick. That made all the difference in the world. Keep us tied, and then we went ahead again. Those 2 points proved to be decisive. Second thing is that South Africa's defense and its discipline mattered the most in the last couple of minutes of the game, and they didn't commit a penalty when it could have been a penalty. Phase after phase, the French were pushing. They got down over the halfway line. They got down to the 10-meter line. Then they went back, and the defense was stalwart and held on there. And Faf de Klerk finally stripped that ball away. And finally, the third thing that made the key difference in this game was South Africa's depth, its bench. The French players began to make mistakes, poor kicks, bad decisions, and ultimately the players off the bench for South Africa had a far greater impact than the bench players for France. And when South Africa began swapping players out, it sort of began to force the French into following suit. Gaultier also began changing players, and the impact wasn't as great. Off the bench for South Africa, Deon Fourie was fantastic. Oxenshea was pretty good. Vincent Kolk was fantastic. Short bit of time that he was in there. Quagga Smith was incredible. Yeah, and RG Snyman, all of them made big contributions off the bench and maintained or improved the level of the game late in the game in the second half that had been apparent in the first half. So, yeah, that's a big difference. The bench, the discipline at the end, and then Cheslin Colby's chase down. How great was Cheslin Colby in this game? All over the place, picking up yards, making great tackles. There was some incredible play here. One of the unheralded players of this game who had a fantastic game was Jesse Creel. Many people aren't talking about, but his game was incredible here. He's a warrior. Did you see what his face looked like when he left the pitch, all bloody? Evan Etzebeth, of course, had a great game. Bongi Mbanambi was the player of the game. He had a great game, did a great job captaining once Khaleesi went out, but some people are giving him a 9 out of 10 performance. I don't think it was that great, but he did have a good game. But what a fantastic performance by Cheslin Colby, by Evan Etzebeth, by Jesse Creel. And quite honestly, in that first half, the exciting play the Springboks demonstrated was set up by the box kicking and the kicking of Monty Lubbock and Cobus Reinach, both of whom set up those 3 tries. Unbelievable stuff. Brilliant play by both of those. And that was my starting fly half, scrum half pick. And that's what they went with. I also went with Vermeulen. The one that did get me, I picked incorrectly, was I picked Keenan Moody over Kurt Arendse, but that's, you can't get them all right. And France, for their part, this is a bitter, difficult loss for them, and you can't help but feel for them. But their bench wasn't up to it in the second half, in my view, when they came up. But some great play from a number of players. Ramos played very well for the most part. He did have one boneheaded kick that hurt them. Damien Penaud had some moments of brilliance, but other than that, he was kind of quiet. I would say that Jalabert was okay, but he also had a strange kick that went backwards. I don't understand what that was. That was an odd one. But the real warrior here was Antoine Dupont. What a hero for France. What an incredible performance. And Movaka, the backup hooker who came in when Julien Marchand went down, was brilliant in this World Cup, but really great in this game. Incredible game. Cyril Bao had a brace of tries, but he was just Johnny on the spot. I don't think he was that great in this game. A lot of people think he was great. But beyond that, Cameron Wilkie was pretty quiet and silent. Dante wasn't that loud. The left wing, Beal Biari, was very silent this game. In fact, that he was targeted by the Springboks for some of those kicks, and that defense found wanting. But what a gut wrencher for the French. This could have gone any way, could have gone either direction, all the way down to the final whistle. And it took Faf de Klerk, like a dogged little terrier, stripping that ball and getting the knock on to end this game. South Africa is lucky to escape, the defending world champs. I'm happy. But I'm most happy for rugby. What an incredible weekend. And I'll do another analysis of the 4 games about how the weekend went. It's just unbelievable for World Rugby. But congratulations to the Springboks. And for those who want to complain about O'Keefe's refereeing, feel free to do it. The calls went both ways badly in many cases. In my view, they tend to be very unfair towards the Springboks, particularly the breakdown. Anytime the French were reaching in off their feet, laying on the ground, picking up the ball, they won penalties. But South Africa, over the ball, on their feet, not touching the ground, with the exception of the Quagga Smith one, penalties, ridiculous. Or then warned in the second half, back off, every time the Springboks came in to poach the ball. And that's the strength of this defense. You got players like Dwayne Vermeulen and Deon Fourie, who are specialists in that. And they really were denied. And also Kitsoff. And you just couldn't do that in this game. But nonetheless, what a challenge. Incredibly loud stadium, cheering Allez les Bleus, Allez les Bleus, and singing the national anthem, Marchand, Marchand, Citoyen, throughout the game. The noise level is incredible. It had to be a challenge for the Springboks. Both these teams had to be nervous. Nobody wanted to go out here, the defending world champs, and the host, who've never made it to who've never won a final. They went to 3 finals. They're knocked out in the quarterfinal. Disappointing for them, to say the least. So the last 3 World Cups, we've had England knocked out, didn't even get to the knockout stage. They didn't get through the pool stage in England. In Japan went 4-0 in the pool, knocked out the quarterfinal by South Africa. And now France at home knocked out the quarterfinal by South Africa. Is that a good omen? We beat Japan at home in the quarterfinal. and won the World Cup. We beat France at home in the quarterfinal. Can we go on and win it? Well, the path looks possible, and we'll see what happens. But congratulations to the Bucks and to all the Springbok fans around the globe. What an epic game. Some say the best World Rugby game ever. I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen all of them over the past century plus, but I can say this one's a game for the ages. And so was that Ireland game against New Zealand. Springboks victorious 29-28. Next up on Saturday, England in a semifinal. Go Bucks.